Yeah, so let's take a. So when I look at my trading performance, personally, I I look at cycles because we're all in crypto. I look at how have I done per cycle. Now, historically, a cycle is 4 years. But historically, pre crypto and all that, I have always looked at myself in 5 year epochs. Um, and what you'll find is that like if this is year zero, this is year five, and then one, two, three, four. A lot of newbie traders, they're really hyper obsessed about how well they did in 1 year. Um, and I think it's really it's a fool's errand. And again, a lot of noobs on Twitter and whatnot, they will judge everyone by their last trade. That's not me. Let's just mute. I'm gonna just
Hello.
hi. Um, all right, let's mute everyone again. Cool. You can unmute yourself. You still have the function too if you want to. Um, so yeah, it's a fool's errand looking, judging someone on their last trade or how they've done it in a year. It's really what you do over a 5 year period that really makes the difference. And and there have been some 5 year epochs where, if we had a chart alongside that, and this would be percentage performance, there have been, especially I guess the last, couple of years, maybe or not maybe, you can do something like this. And then all it takes is basically that. And then, you just go sideways for a year and a bit. So in a 5 year epoch, like there's normally three, probably about two or three trades actually. So in reality, with the style of trading that I personally do, I tend to do this. Like I tend to have like three big wins in a 5 year in a 5 year play. So I'll bleed a bit, trying to find that those Gucci pucker setups. Um, and then I'll have like a big win, so to speak. And then I'll, bleed a bit and then have another, big win. And it will look something like this. So in any 5 year period, I personally, I'm not trying to brag, I'm trying to say that in a 5 year window, I do outperform, the market. And when I say the market, I outperform Bitcoin. That is my market. Anyone that tries to benchmark themselves against the S&P 500 is, I mean, it's the wrong metric because the currency expansion rate is bleeding you dry anyway. Um, so for me, that is my benchmark. If you can't beat Bitcoin, you're doing something wrong. Now, historically, over the last 3 years, 2 years, I think I have actually bled against Bitcoin. Um, but again, I make all my money in the bull market, as will you guys. Now, during this sort of 5 year like window, you will think about or try and look at a whole bunch of different setups. Very similar to what I'm saying over here. So this is a nice setup, and if it works, beautiful. And by the way, if it does work, it doesn't necessarily mean it will perpetuate ad infinitum. It just means that okay, that worked, great. Let's try it again. And then with any form of sort of trend in the market, you you can't really forecast too far ahead. So you just take one oscillation at a time. And eventually, one day, let's say this is a lovely money maker, and we end up just riding this lovely, you know, this wave. One day there will be a wave where it doesn't work. Okay, but that's just normal. Remember, the trend is your friend until the bend at the end. But during this phase, you will like, you may have a whole bunch of different lovely setups that you may come across. And, probably I haven't done this correctly. And then, some of these setups, it won't work, some will, most won't. And that's just the nature of the game. So I think you all need to take, not that you're not, but have a much broader perspective. And don't forget, like we are, whoa, hello. Oh, that's interesting. Why did it not copy? Um, and also the other thing which I think we really need to sort of keep in the back of our heads is that the singularity is near. And that singularity is really freaking scary in many ways. Um, so the singularity is realistically anywhere really from 2027 to 2028. Um, and AI is just going to continually just yeah, I mean, it's hard to even draw the growth curves because in every little aspect of AI, the growth curves are like that. If you look at computer vision, it's like that. You look at inference, it's like this. You look at compute, it's like this. You look at distributed training, fine tuning, it looks like this. Pre-training, it looks like this. Um, that every little thing I look at in AI, it's like a vertical curve. And then when you compare, like if that all of these curves that I've just drawn are centralized for-profit entities, let's just call it centralized AI. If you were to then plot decentralized distributed open source AI, i.e. stuff in Bittensor, the curves are more vertical. So obviously not to scale, but every way you look at the growth curves are just absolutely insane. And so like I am worried and I'm also excited at the same time because we have basically AGI that's most likely going to be born in 2027 to 2028. It will most likely be born in 2026 and then spend a year in a sandbox before it gets let out or it escapes on its own accord. Um, so I'm pretty sure someone's already got AGI just sat there in a air-gapped sandbox. Did you hear about OpenAI's was it O3 model recently? If so, I'm not doing this justice, but in its code, it had effectively a kill switch. But OpenAI, the model itself was basically self-rewriting it to basically delete the kill switch. I mean, that's that's incredible already. It's very similar to like Meta's AIs where they had two AIs in a sandbox. They were talking to each other in English, and then they both quickly realized that English was an incredibly inefficient language, and so they stopped using English and they created their own language. And then Meta were like, "Oh shit, turn it off, turn it off." So yeah. So here's the crazy thing: AGI is going to be here in a couple of years, and then 1 year later, ASI is here, which that's the scary bit. ASI sort of really scares me. But long story short, um, like everything AI is just going to go up, and that also includes BitTensor. That also includes Alpha. When we get down into the nitty gritty, the weeds of it all, um, it just this is the easiest wave that we can ever ride ever. Um, and every single time I have a Zoom call with the subnet owner, I learn all sorts of like they share stuff like really deep and what's coming in the pipeline. And I'm like, holy shit, every subnet I've spoken to has exciting things in the pipeline that obviously isn't coming out or that hasn't been announced yet. And so it just makes me incredibly bullish. And so I know sounds all nihilistic and whatnot. The only and I'm genuinely quite worried about ASI. But you have to bring things back to what we can control. What can we control? We just need to make a shit ton of money in the shortest time frame possible, like over the next 2 years. You have to do your best to make as much money as possible so that whatever shit there is coming, if there is shit, you can insulate yourself as much as possible. So, like, if you hopefully you've all read my book or listened to it, but when you get to the batshit crazy stuff later on in the book about I can't even find. I can never find things in my book when I want to reference to it. But it's where I talk about my personal sovereignty stuff. So you need personal sovereignty in in money, transport, sustenance. I think that's how you spell sustenance. Um, bu- 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 and protection.
Wasn't it
And
seven
then
G's?
yeah, that's more of an insulated. Yeah, the seven G's, gold guns, grub, ground, gasoline, generators, and girls. They're my seven G's. But like, if you have personal monetary sovereignty, so no one can control what you spend, where you spend it, that's what crypto is there for. Personal transport sovereignty, like not everyone can get to that stage, but I'd like the ability to be able to bug out to a bolt hole if shit really did hit the fan because roads, ports, and airports are the first thing that are closed when shit hits the fan. Sustenance, that's food and drinking water. Um, so this is sort of this is the non-perishable food company that I want to set up soon. And all of you can do that yourself. Like just buy a year's worth of sustenance. It's really easy to buy a year's worth of food and drinking water. Because you can get, reverse osmosis pumps and all that sort of stuff. You need a base. So believe it or not, I do actually want to buy a house because I want a base. And when you buy a house, you never actually own it because if you stop paying the council tax, guess what happens to your house? So really, when you buy land or a house, you're simply renting it from the government. And if you stop paying your rent, i.e. the council tax, you lose your house. Um, and then protection, yeah, that's another topic. So for me, Bittensor is just the easiest way to generate the most amount of money possible in the shortest period of time, so you can self-insulate yourself for what may happen in the future.